Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the Mining Podcast, a show that brings you latest insights, thought leadership, and stories from across the global mining industry. In today's episode, we have Charlie Forrest, who's the CEO of Dingo, who are an award-winning enterprise predictive maintenance software solutions company for the mining industry. They help reduce major component failures, improve reliability of assets, and safely boost production whilst decreasing maintenance costs. In this episode, we're going to dig into what's really holding maintenance teams back from fragmented OEM systems and underused data to the challenges of turning early warnings into actual decisions on the ground. We're also going to explore what Charlie is seeing across different operations where AI is generally starting to move the needle and what the best run sites are doing differently when it comes to reliability. If you care about what's getting beyond dashboards and into real operational impact, this is a conversation obviously worth paying attention to. So Charlie, great to have you on the podcast. How are you?
Good. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate the intro. It's very flattering, but I was trying to do our best to help the mining industry. So, pleasure to be a guest.
Yeah, certainly. And obviously, I've got many questions to ask you. But before we get into that, I wanted you to just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, obviously about your career, how your career has obviously developed
Sure.
to obviously up to today. So I'll hand it over to you.
Well, interesting little story. I've said it a few times when we actually sold Dingo when we were out in the road. But my whole life's been in mining. Actually grew up in a farm in the Barossa Valley in South Australia, and ironically, my dad had a little quarry with a digger and a truck, and we used to sell the material to local council. So literally, since I was a little kid, I've been involved in mining. Moved into technology. My first job was out of university in technology in mining. Moved to Indonesia, in the middle of Indonesia for my first gig. Then on to Brazil, where I did sort of similar things as well. Time in Canada with a company doing some geological modeling software. Back in Oz for a little while, so you can kind of get the sense, a bit of a global citizen. And the last few stints have been in London and then Finland. So a few different companies. Kind of the fun fact I like to kind of relate to is that every company I've worked for has been bought and sold more than once. So I've kind of seen what it takes in the mining industry to take a small company and grow it into something larger and kind of solve some decent problems in the industry. But yeah, always in mining tech, just worked my way through my career in implementations, technical roles, through into product management, into sales, running regions. And then, thought I'd have a crack at being a CEO at Dingo, and turned out pretty good. So I took over from Paul Higgins a few years ago. He was retiring, exited the business to Riverside recently. It's actually nearly been a year now. So backed by private equity now. And the nice thing is we've got a huge amount of capital to deploy. We're looking at M&A, and we've pretty much doubled headcount again in the last 4 months. So it's just exciting times for us to have a crack at the industry. It's still pretty untapped, a lot of areas to improve. So yeah, pretty exciting what's going on, to be honest.
Yeah. Obviously, you mentioned you've been across the world, worked in various countries. How do each country or each region, do they view maintenance differently, or is there pretty much a common theme amongst all the different regions, continents that you've obviously worked in?
Yeah. Well, look, and we used to have a competition between a few mates, and we work together now. It's like, how many mine sites can we go to? And we lost count of actual unique ones after 200, I think it was 150. So open pit underground, always go underground when we get a chance. And to be honest, it's probably more cultural, the differences. So culture as well as kind of labor, I'd say labor costs. So that's the main two differences, where African countries might throw more labor at a problem, less skilled resources. Doesn't mean they don't understand or want to be better at maintenance practices. And then you've got highly skilled people in Australia and Americas, where you might only have one person versus, ideally they'd love to have 3 or 4 reliability engineers, just can't afford it. So there's still, I'd say, common denominator across the industry still is that It's heavy machinery. It's unpredictable to a certain extent. So they all face the same challenges, but tackle them slightly different ways, I guess.
Yeah. So I wonder if you can just give us a snapshot of Dingo as a
hmm
company.
Sure. So, 30 odd year company, long standing customers like Newmont, and Tech and, NGM, Agnica Eagle, a lot of long term customers, which is great. Had a foundational system, which was fantastic around condition monitoring. I think it's the one thing that people, don't understand, I guess, in asset intensive industries where you have like an ERP and then you have like an asset management system or a CMMS system. We play that next layer down. And it took me a while to understand what we did. So we actually play in what's called condition monitoring. So not right at the asset level, right down into components and the condition of these components. And the devil's in the detail with all the weeds around what determines what's going to fail in a component. So we play basically on the shop floor, around the tools, helping those types of operators perform. And that's kind of where we've moved, and solely focused in on mining. We still have customers in wind and rail, but when I joined, us went 100% laser focused in mining. It's a huge industry. All our backgrounds and the whole company is mining. So our domain expertise, mining. Majority of people have either picked up a wrench before, or been in mining tech for 20 odd years. The same people actually who work with me, probably about 30 or 40 people. We've all worked for the same companies like 3 or 4 times. So this whole group actually brought across, as part of the deal, with Paul, the owner. So if I'm going to have a crack at Dingo and be a CEO and lead it to be $1 billion company one day, I need my team. And these are all seasoned people. So, which obviously helps. So essentially, we look after the condition of assets and right down to that component level, solely focused on mining for now.
Obviously, you've been in the industry for a while, as you mentioned in the
Yeah, few
introduction.
great hairs.
Yeah. Why do you think so many maintenance teams still end up firefighting, even after obviously investing in all the right monitoring
Hmm.
tools?
Well, look, if you've been to the amount of sites that I have or our team, you realize that it's not just like a simple thing to have a dashboard, in a mine site and look at it all day, or analyze all the data and look at it. You've got a day job to do. There's firefighting on other areas of the business, yet alone, watching some alarms or some data. So I think a big part of it still, we've gone through this phase of collecting data and a lot of data over like 10 years. And now it's almost the opposite. Everyone's got too much data. They don't know what to do with it. And now they're overloaded with all this data. They've got all the dashboards, all the bells and whistles, and they don't have any time to look at it. Or they look at it and go, we're inundated. What do? It's like this big fire hose again of all this data and like, what thing do I do next? And then your boss is telling you to go out on the shop floor. You're like, so it's actually inundating for them to figure out what to do, right? So that's kind of where we still slot in really nicely, around kind of what I like to explain is like it's a big funnel of data, and we just funnel it down into something manageable. Give the guys some relief, and these are the 3 things you can work on that's going to help you solve these problems, rather than try and guess and spray and pray about what you can do during your day job. So yeah, that's in a nutshell.
When you talk to obviously maintenance and reliability teams, what's the most
Mm.
common frustration you hear when it comes to actually using the data that they already have?
Look, it's funny, it's ironic, this is the same thing that's happened with my start of my career around there's still disparate systems, consolidating all these systems, and they've got these dashboards and they're doing a lot of work, and things still fall through the cracks. And that was actually the first thing I asked when I did a round the world trip when I first joined Dingo, and asked all our long term customers like Newmont, 20 years. I'm like, no offense, but please tell me the value proposition of Dingo. Like, why are you still using Dingo after 20 years? And they said that exact same thing. They said, you guys, you don't let anything fall through the cracks. We're like that safety net or that safety blanket. And, this is a tier one miner that, in 20 years, they still rely on us to, and you think about it, like, have all this data was great. And they've got great reliability teams, all the processes, everything's well oiled. But if just one thing falls through the cracks, then it's a total waste, and it could cost them millions. So that's what we do. We save something falling through the cracks, and it pays for itself each year at each site. And it's as simple as that, really.
A lot of obviously sites are running mixed fleets with different OEM systems. How big of a challenge is that in practice when you're trying to get obviously a clear picture of asset health?
Yeah, look, it's always the chicken and the egg a little bit, right? The mining companies would love to just have one OEM to run the whole fleet and have one system, but then obviously they're tied to supply and parts and kind of tied to an OEM. So it's kind of half the reason why a lot of miners kind of opt for multiple OEMs, but then that comes with their own systems, their own support, their own service. I think that's where, again, it starts to become an issue around all these siloed data sources, and then bringing it all together to figure out, what problems exist across the fleet. It's very difficult, right, when you got mixed fleets. So you might fix one problem somewhere and something else pops up somewhere else. So yeah, I think again, it's like disparate systems, siloed. When you got multiple OEMs, you got multiple other types of systems. Again, it just compounds the classic use case again of trying to consolidate all this stuff together, and then you have in your spare time do your day job as well as figure out what to fix before it breaks. So
There's often a gap between seeing a problem coming and obviously actually doing something about it. Um, what do you think about that, and how do you think about it?
well, I think that's what gives us our unique ability, is that we've got the 25 nearly 30 years worth of data, and we see. The tricky thing is combining things like fluid analysis, which we do, all the telemetry data that we just spoke about, and then all the visual inspections that we do, like filters and mag plugs. Um, there's a lot of indications across all of those combined that gives you kind of some future reference point of something happening. And because we've had all of the occurrences happen in the past, we know what's happened in all these mine sites, we can predict pretty easily, right? These 5 indicators have led to this failure in 3 months' time or in 2 months' time. So having that insight with the domain expertise on top of that give customers I guess reassurance that we know what we're doing. But yeah, it's not that simple, right? It's all the devil in the detail around these things. But yeah, being able to kind of look at holistically the data over 30 years with the domain expertise gives us that kind of future insight, and at least give them the option to forecast a bit better compared to what they currently do, which is a bit of a shooting in the dark.
You've obviously got visibility across a lot of obviously different sites and obviously across the world. What are their patterns or insights that only really show up when you look beyond obviously a single operation?
Mhm. Interestingly, and the OEMs probably won't like this, but yeah, it's very common case. We get it all the time that a mine site in some country will say, "Oh, the OEM said this is our problem with these transmissions," and they have no other reference, so they don't know. And we come along and go, actually, you know what? There's this that same problem in Chile and Australia, and this and this and this. It's actually a supply of this transmission. It's actually a fault in whatever OEM, and it's been like this. We've known about it. It gives them some confidence they can go back and obviously know there's not just there's something going on with their site. So that's a very common one we come across every day.
There's obviously a lot of noise around AI in mining right
Mhm.
now. Where do you see it generally helping, and where do humans still obviously play a critical role?
Yeah, I mean, it's changing every day, right? In our lives across not just our own businesses, but across all businesses. I think first and foremost for us, it's efficiency gains. We obviously process a lot of data, and we provide a service. So streamlining that then gives us the ability to add higher value tasks, like help with maintenance strategies rather than be in the weeds as much as we are. And we're already getting some wins on the board with that. But I think, deeper insights, like we've got a lot of data, but we haven't gone and dug deep into it. I think there's a lot of information in there we just is nested away that we haven't unlocked to the full potential of it either. So that's the kind of next phase of what else can we offer our customers that they haven't seen before, we haven't kind of given them the option to embrace. And I think we'll start to open all that up. And I honestly, I have no idea how good that's going to be. I suspect it's going to be drip fed in, because if you overwhelm a customer with all these new insights, then they're going to be back to square one where they've got too much information. So it's that balance around streamlining stuff, but also getting better insights. I think that's if we can laser focus in on, really critical analysis that helps customers even more, then I think that's where we can leverage it. But it's interesting. It's kind of a little bit scary at the same time, and keeps me up at night figuring out where it's going to go and how it's going to pan out. But I think the two fundamentals in any SaaS business, especially in the market, you probably know the SaaS apocalypse, is data and domain expertise will stand the test of time, and that's fundamentally what we have as a business. So we're in pretty good stead. Not going to be complacent, but just crack on with a good opportunity to leverage it.
If you think about the best run operations, obviously you've seen, what are they doing differently when it comes to maintenance and reliability?
Yeah, I think like Newmont's probably a good example, because they've been around for a long time. They've bought multiple other assets. I think they have like a very good framework in place, sort of procedures and way they go about working, and a structure in place that's repeatable. And they have that kind of like group function across from HQ across all their sites. It comes and goes. Like, obviously, all miners kind of sometimes do corporate stuff and then roll back to sites and have some autonomy that way. But I think that group function serves them well. They've always had this program called Asset Full Potential Program. Yeah, that's what, well, because they've always had that focus on their assets and extracting the most out of them, and that includes their equipment and maintenance. So I think for good operations, that focus, because the reality is that we sell into maintenance departments which aren't the most what's the right word, extroverted department, I call them, and you don't get many general managers or mine managers who actually come from maintenance. They usually come from production, because production's king, and maintenance is in the corner there. So it's a tough one to get out of that mold. I think it's departments and companies that embrace maintenance as that pillar is kind of the ones that do well, because without the equipment running, everyone knows the impact, right? So I think that merging, and Newmont do a good job of kind of removing those silos essentially between maintenance, production, and even fixed plant. So
Yeah. You mentioned obviously maintenance departments may have different and many systems in place.
mhm.
What would make them then decide, right, I want to explore what Dingo offer? What are probably some of the catalysts as to why they may come to that decision?
It's funny. We're still educating the market, unfortunately. That's just the mining industry still. Once we get boots on the ground, we go out and see them. It's like showing someone. It's like they didn't know there was something out there that helped them, could solve their problems. They feel like they're on their own a lot, and they come up with their own solutions. Obviously, they have to be innovative, and that's when like most of these sites. And a good example, I was in Turkey a couple of years ago, and they had everything put together. It was perfect. They had perfect to a certain sense. They had everything put together in these dashboards, bunch of smart guys. They rocked up to site and they showed me all this stuff, and they're really proud. I said, this is fantastic. I said, what's that truck doing down the pit that's broken down? They're like, yeah, it's exactly like the problem, right? It's like we just, it fell through the cracks, and we'd love to be better at it, but it's the reality, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Look, yeah, I was also going to say, like, for them, that was a trigger point. Obviously, a breakdown is always a trigger, which is unfortunate. You don't want that to happen. But I think, again, educating the market, getting out there more, letting customers and prospects know that there's alternatives to piecemealing it together, or having assets that a lot of people rely on their ERP, right, which is too high a level. You need to be in the weeds a bit. That's just the reality of mining to fix components and extend them. So
If you're looking out to the future, how would you say machine learning is going to be developing? And in turn, how reliability is going to improve machines within the mining industry. If you had a crystal ball, how would you see
Mm.
this playing out?
I guess depends how much money you got for me, Rob, to disclose that information. But that's a $1 billion question. That one. Look, I think there's going to be more autonomous equipment and smarter equipment. Obviously, it goes without saying. Fluid analysis is improving how they collect data. I think one thing I'm still surprised in the industry, which I think is a big disruptor, is there's still not a lot of wireless technology, sensor technology for equipment. So I think that part of it, if there's better, because I'm not sure if you know, but like the single point of failure for any bit of sensor on a piece of equipment is a cable, and usually an antenna. If the antenna cable breaks, which is usually pretty thin, then you got no data. So there's that still Achilles heel, but it can be wireless sensors that can transmit a lot of data somehow through the CAN bus would be fantastic. Then I think that will be what changes the landscape a bit as well. But yeah, look, I mean, who knows with AI and everything else going on? That'll be be interesting. So.
Yeah. And lastly, what's the outlook for Dingo over the next sort of 12 to 18 months? And is there anything else that you want to share with our audience?
So yeah, we're on an M&A trajectory. So actually, we've got a lot of exciting pipeline of M&A, which is great. I think that really will help our existing customers and our prospects show that we're a platform. So Riverside bought us for that platform to grow out. So we'll be offering multiple solutions across the value chain, extending off our core, not branching off too far from that. Potentially expanding into some other verticals, but fundamentally mining at our core. And in the next little while, we want to be $1 billion company. So that's my aim. So that's our aim as a company. We don't want to be small time. We want to be, if we're not already industry leaders in a niche little market, we want to be industry leaders in a bigger market. I think is fundamentally what we'd like to achieve, and that expands out into eventually production and things like that because they go hand in hand. So we can break down the silos across departments within mining organizations. I think that's the biggest challenge for any company trying to do that end to end supply chain. But if we do it at a smaller level with condition monitoring, there's no reason why we can't do it. And we're already seeing it now. We're actually doing a lot in fixed plant, which we just fell into because customers asked us for it. So yeah, I think customers and prospects can expect a lot out of us in the next 3 to 5 years, and a few more grey hairs and a few more round the world trips. But exciting times, honestly. So good fun.
Charlie, really appreciate your time. Thank you for obviously sharing your story. Thank you for telling us all about Dingo and obviously sharing your knowledge around obviously predictive maintenance software solutions, reliability, machine learning, and all the above. And if our audience wants to reach out to you, if obviously they want to follow your story and inquire about your services, how can they go about doing that, and what social media platform channels are you on?
I'm not a huge one on social media, to be honest, only because I've got 3 kids and they're all on it. But obviously, our website, LinkedIn, anyone can hit me up on LinkedIn. Email or phone, people can find me pretty easily. But I think we've got a pretty good presence online with marketing in at least our website and LinkedIn. But we do, we just for reference, like we kind of, I think we're 10x on our marketing spend this year. So we're getting serious about that kind of stuff. So, and hence why doing things like this as well, getting a bit more exposure and getting out of the market and hopefully help prospects be educated and learn a bit more about there's solutions out there to help. And if we can, then great. And onwards and upwards. So.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll include all those detailed social media channels in the show notes of companies for easy access, so our listeners can obviously follow the story, reach out to you, and obviously good luck in developing the business. And no doubt, very soon you will be that $1 billion company, and more than
Hope
welcome
so.
to come on the podcast next year and give us an update and maybe talk about some of the challenge that you've seen since coming on now next year and what you've seen over the course of the year. So more than welcome to come back on next year.
Yeah, look, I think in a year's time, a lot would have changed, especially with the landscape of AI. So, yeah, appreciate the platform, Rob, and the opportunity. And it's been, can help one customer, one prospect, then it's worth it, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
pleasure.
certainly. Well, all the best for the year, and no doubt we'll speak as the year goes on, or even into next year. So, thank you for your time.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed that episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. And like, for instance, this episode, please share it across all your networks. This obviously episode wasn't necessarily speaking about a jurisdiction. This can cover every jurisdiction in the world, and obviously maintenance is an important issue for companies in production, obviously to reduce costs, especially with energy costs at the moment going up. Something like this could help organizations obviously reduce costs. So I think this episode should be shared to everyone and anyone that you know in the industry that would like to know and understand more about obviously saving costs. So thank you again for listening, and until next time, happy mining.